So now that we've got our pipes spawning, we need to make sure they spawn properly. The way we're going to do that is we're going to do some math. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our pond spawner and we're going to reset it back to origin. And now we're going to drag it out to where we would like things to spawn. This way, whenever our pipes are spawning, they are still going to be taking this as a reference point when they start flying towards our bird. And to make things consistent, we are also going to move our spawner a little bit away from the background so that when it's spawning our pipes in, it has that as a reference point. Now this line looks pretty good, I'm happy with that. We need to get an idea of where we should be spawning at a default sense. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go and we're going to scale this bad boy all the way up here. And we're going to bring them over towards our spawner so that we can have it as a bit of a reference point here. So now, just because we need to have a second reference point, I'm going to drag in a second pipe. And we're going to make it look like our bottom pipe. And to make it look like our bottom pipe, we're first going to put it into the middle. Then we're going to use 90 for the Z rotation, and we have 180 for the X rotation. And that looks like a mighty fine bottom pipe. Now to keep things consistent, I will make it also at 77 on the location there, and then I'm going to drag it on over so we can start doing some stuff. Now we'll worry about gap in a minute. The first thing we want to do is we want to basically see where the middle is. Now you'd think the middle would be easy. You'd think the middle would be zeroed out on one of these, but that's not the case because we're not spawning based off of the head, we're spawning based off of the middle of this pipe. So we need to get a sense of this offset. So to get our pipes to about the middle here, we can see that we're going to need to have it look something like this. Now based off the fact that I haven't properly reset these, I will just quickly do that so that everyone can have a little bit of their sanity back. And now we can see this is about what I would expect the normal spawn of our pipes to be under normal circumstances. So if we go into code, I'm going to create another variable. Now this is going to be a simple variable, and we're going to call this vector our pipe length. And we're going to set this equal to an f vector that is equal to the change we want to see on the right axis. Now, what axis do we want to change? If we go here, we can see I want to change up and down. So what happens when I change up and down? That's going to be Z. So we want to change this by about 325 in either direction. So to make things consistent, I think we'll cut the middle. This one's at about 337 and this one's at about 325. So we're going to meet at the middle at about 333 on the Z axis. So we'll add in 0 on X, 0 on Y, and 333.f on our Z. Now we're going to add this new variable into our location calculation, and we're going to do that by making sure that when we're dealing with our bottom pipe, we are going to subtract by our pipe length because we want this to go down. And when we're dealing with our top pipe, we're going to add because we want this to go up. And since I'm a fool, I added a semicolon. Let's just delete that there. And I'm going to save, and then I'm going to compile. And then to make sure that everything is seeable, I'm going to take my spawner and I'm going to move it back into the middle so that when I hit play, we can see that we are spawning those pipes exactly to the criteria that we had just thought about there. Now, the next thing we need to figure out is the gap we want the pipes to have. Now, this is going to take a little bit of guesswork, but we can at least get an educated guess by doing some more work in our viewport here. For the sake of scale, I'm dragging my bird into the world, and now we're going to take a look at our pipes one more time. So we know that our pipes are going to be looking about like this. So how big a gap do we want? Well, adjusting from -333, let's move down about, 100. So let's just take this and nice and easy input -433. And then on the top, let's make sure we go to +433. That is a pretty sizable gap. I'm honestly not sure if that's going to be too big or too small, but this gives us a place to start. So when we go back into code, you know it, you love it, we're going to make another f vector. And this f vector is going to be called our pipe gap, and I'm going to make it equal to a new f vector that is going to give 0 in the x, 0 in the y, and about 100 in the z. And the reason we need a second variable here is because I might want to adjust my pipe gap, but my pipe length is pretty fixed. So then, same as before, we are now going to go into each of our variables here, and we are going to change our bottom pipe to now spawn at a different location based off of both pipe length and our pipe gap that we want to implement. And we're going to do the same thing to our top pipe to add that gap in there as well. So now I will save and compile, and we can see that happens just nicely, and let's take a look and see what happens. Now that is a healthy gap. Now I'll be honest, if this was the only thing we were doing all game long, this would get boring pretty quick. So we're gonna have to introduce some variability in order to make this a little bit more fun. Now nothing is more fun than random number generators, and we're gonna be using a random number generator here. So when I Google random number generator for Unreal Engine 5, I get brought to a page that looks similar to this. And this is a great page. It's showing me really what I want, and it's that we can choose a range and then we can generate a random number within that range. Now, I'm fine with int 32, I suppose, but I honestly think that float would be the most consistent for us. So I'm going to click on the float version of this, and it's going to bring me to a new page, which tells me how I can make sure this happens in my project. So I'm going to take this include here, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to drop it within my spawner as another header file. So now that we know we can create a random number, we need to know the bounds of which we want to create this number between. So let's go back to our viewport. So we already know the length of our pipe. The length of our pipe that needs to be offset is about 333 units. Now, what is the length of our world here? So if we again reset this back to 0, we will offset our pipe to its upper value of 333, and then we know we have a pipe gap of about another 100. So let's go to 433. Now, what would be the highest I would want my pipe to go? Well, we can do that nice and easy. Let's just start incrementing this a little bit here. So let's just start dragging up. Honestly, I think this would probably be the highest that I'd want my pipe to ever spawn. So we know that we're adding about another 250, give or take, onto the top side, and then that will get mirrored on the bottom side. So now we're gonna go back into code, and we're gonna create another vector. Now for this vector, we're going to be doing something different. So when I create this f vector, we are still going to be adding 0 in the x, 0 in the y, but for our z, we need to do something a little bit different, and we're going to utilize the random. Now luckily, we already know what we need to call because we had that file before. So we're going to call into fmath, and we're going to call frand range, or frand range. And then from here, we're going to open up our parentheses and we're going to put in the bounds. Now we already discovered our bounds. We want this to be bounded to either minus 250.f or to positive 250.f. depending on which way we're implementing this randomness. Now, because we're working with both negative and positive numbers, the way we're going to add pipe change into our actual pipes is going to be different than what we've been doing so far. Because negative numbers and addition and subtraction are rather complicated, we are going to need to flip the sign for our negative number to account for the fact that, well, sometimes it will be negative. So we're going to make sure that for our bottom pipe, we're going to make sure we're adding our pipe change, so that when we are adding a negative, we are getting more negative, and when we're subtracting a positive, we are moving towards the top pipe. And then we're going to make sure that we are still simply just adding in pipe change to our top pipe. And save, compile, goes through without a hitch. Let's hit play. And now we can see that our pipes are spawning in a variable way, and we have that consistent gap, and it looks oh so pretty. Now we do see here that we might need to adjust our range because we can see that one pipe in particular, we might be going a little bit too high. It's also important to note that maybe I just can't do math. And lo and behold, that is the answer. So we can see here that 578 is not 250 more. When we account for the fact that we do have our regular pipe gap, we need to only add 150. So when I go back in, I'm going to adjust my random range here to be from negative 150 to positive 150 to account for the fact that we have this pipe gap. So I save, compile, and now I can go and hit play again, and I'll close out this compiler. And now we can see that things should be a lot more stable here. Now you can see we're getting a good amount of variability within our pipes, and everything looks pretty okay here.